Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the front room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host, Sean. On this episode, we have the Chicago Bears in the season of giving, as in giving games away, and the Cubs and White Sox being the center of the Hot Stove League action. All this and more on this episode of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. The next home game is Saturday, 10 p.m., and it's Salvation Army Red Kettle Night. So get your generous donations ready and head on over to icehogs.com to get your tickets, jerseys, shirts, hats, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. All right. We have Chicago Bears action. I'm going to jump into that. We'll talk a little baseball, maybe jump into hockey too, depending on how long this episode goes. But I want to start with the Chicago Bears first. And not just talk about this game yesterday against the Detroit Lions, because that was just as miserable as you could be at this point in the season. But some overall overarching things with the Chicago Bears that we have going on. The first thing is I had this for notes for last week, and I didn't bring them up, but I wanted to mention it is Jay Cutler is officially done for the season, put on the injured reserve list. And the thing about it is, this is the frustrating part, and this is where we'll get into a little bit deeper, but the Chicago Bears organization, the NFL insiders, the Jason LaConforas and those guys, they were all reporting that the news was Jay Cutler had a torn labrum, was going to need surgery, was going to be out for the season. That was all of the insider reports. But you have Ryan Pace, the Bears general manager, just silent, doesn't say anything. John Fox, on the other hand, is in front of the media saying, "Oh, you guys just make things up. Guys just report whatever you want, blah, blah, blah." And they kept Jay on the active roster for another week. There was no way Jay was playing. They called it day to day, and suddenly a week or two later, Jay has surgery, and they announce he's done for the season. This is so frustrating. This is the reason we don't believe anything that comes out of Hallis Hall. Whether it be as fans or as media, we don't believe what they have to say because they say a lot of lies. You know what? It's fine if you don't want to come out right out and say Jay Cutler's done for the season. You could say something along the lines of, "We weren't happy with the first evaluation. We are having a second opinion." Or you could just say, "We don't want to comment at this time." That sucks. Both those things really suck, but they're better than just straight up lying to us and then wanting us to believe all the other crap that you try to spin and pull to us with us every week in and out with. Mushmouth today. The kind of crap that you feed us day in and day out. It's just another Bears cover-up, like the Kevin White injury. It's just stupid stuff that we're tired of listening to. Let's see. Oh, you know what? I don't know why I didn't put this a little higher up. I just want to take a quick moment of silence. If you haven't heard the news, former Bears running back, former Heisman Trophy winner, Rashaan Salaam committed suicide last week. Very, very sad thing. You don't know whether to get the other things going on in his life, depression, CTE, whatever the case may be. It's always sad when a human loses their life, and family members have to lose a loved one at any time of the year, but especially, we're 2 weeks from Christmas. So I want to just give a moment of silence for Rashaan Salaam. And just remember this number, 1-800-273-8255. That's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Remembering that number and being able to pass it on could save somebody's life. So it's 1-800-273-8255. All right, let's quickly talk about where we were, where we are, and Sunday's game. If you think about this, 2 years ago, the Chicago Bears defense was dead last in the league, number 32 out of 32 teams. And the offense was ranked 24th out of 32. So right at that bottom part of the league. And that was really bad. And that was a really trying time in the Chicago Bears organization. They were tail spinning. There was just no end in sight of how bad this was. And there was a change in general manager and a change of head coach and the whole coaching staff in general, and a lot of players were gone too. And although none of us are happy with what the Bears' regular season schedule or record is so far, is we can at least take solace that the Bears' defense right now is ranked number 7, and the offense is ranked number 16. And although I think that's based on yardage rather than scoring, because this team is not really getting in the end zone, but they have been able to move the ball consistently during the season, which is something that we haven't seen on a regular basis in a long time. Normally this Bears offense is a 3 and out or pick up one first down and then 3 and out punt. It's normally a stagnant type of offense for years and years, but the offense has actually been able to move the ball and be able to get big chunks of yardage when they need to at the end of halves and at the end of games. They just haven't been able to consistently put points on the board. But this defense has played fairly well, especially considering that the injuries that they have at all levels, from the front line to the linebackers to the defensive backs. And that's just something to remark about, that they have made these strides in 2 years. With that said, the Bears gave this game away to the Lions. Absolutely gave it. I guess we'll talk about the position breakdowns and then a little bit more about the game. The quarterback play. Because I know this is the one everybody wants to hear about, everyone wants to discuss, and everyone seems to have an opinion about. It's Matt Barkley. Matt Barkley had an okay game. He didn't do anything spectacular, but he didn't screw up anything. He just looks steady out there. And I feel bad for Matt Barkley because, well, I may not feel bad for him after I see his next contract, but he's going to be a free agent at the end of the season. And this is great for him that he's getting playing time in a start, but the reason I feel bad is there's a couple levels of quarterbacks in the NFL. One of them is this upper echelon type quarterback that they can win you a Super Bowl. Peyton Mannings, the Tom Brady's, the Ben Roethlisbergers, these guys that they can win a game. They can throw 500 yards and 4 touchdowns if they need to. Then there's this next tier of quarterbacks that they're okay, and they might get you some playoff games here and there, but they're just never going to rise to the occasion. Or if they do win you a Super Bowl, it's not that they won it by themselves. They had a strong running game or a great defense, etc. And then there's that other tier of quarterbacks, which is everybody else. And a good chunk of teams have that situation as their starting quarterback, where they need to get better and they don't know how to get better. There's not enough quarterbacks to go around. And pretty much most backups in this league fall in that category, where they're not good. There's not enough starting quarterback people with good enough talent to play starting quarterback in this league. There's not even 32 of them. Not even one for every team. Now Matt Barkley he's shown he's got some decent stuff, and he stood tall in the pocket. He's been decent at avoiding sacks. Other than that first game, he's protected the ball well. He's been able to make some deep throws, and this team has played hard for him. So he's doing all those things right. It's just that he doesn't have a strong arm, and he's on his fourth team in 3 years. And we all remember if he would have come out his junior year, he would have been he probably would have been the top quarterback taken in the draft. And he went that one extra year, his senior year, and he just didn't play the team wasn't good, he wasn't good. And now what you have, and he's probably somewhere on the low end of, he's either that bottom echelon at the top or at the bottom of that second tier, where he's getting the playing time, but he's just not doing enough to warrant him to get one of these incredible contracts. And he's not doing enough, I don't think, to earn some sort of starting spot within a league. I know there's a lot of Bears fans out there that want him to be the starting quarterback next year, but the thing is just look at the numbers. They're pedestrian. They're not bad, but they're not great. He's not winning them ball games. And I know it takes a team to do these things, but if you're rebuilding from scratch, if you have a top-notch defense and you're a playoff-bound team and you just have quarterback struggles or quarterback injuries or something like that, and you're not drafting very high in the draft, all right, you give a flyer to Matt Barkley and he can be a game manager. But if you're a team like the Chicago Bears and you have to just basically rebuild from scratch, why are you going to do it and build around a quarterback that's just pedestrian? That's not how you win championships. New England wouldn't build a team around a Matt Barkley. That's where you want to be. You want to build your team around a Ben Roethlisberger. You want to build your team around a top-notch quarterback. And Matt Barkley seems like a really nice guy, and he's clearly a much better football player than I am, but he's not an elite quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. So why wouldn't you want to do whatever you could to get an elite quarterback that you can build your team around? If you want to keep him around as the backup, I'm so behind that, because he would be a really, really top-notch backup. He's come in and he's played as if you consider him as he's the fourth string quarterback for the Bears. Because you had Jay hurt, you've got Hoyer hurt, you had the kid that got hurt in preseason that broke his leg, and I guess maybe even fifth string because you got rid of David Fales and then you brought in Matt Barkley, and he's the one that's starting for you. So if you consider him that, based on being a fourth, fifth string quarterback, he's performing like he's the Tom Brady of fourth and fifth string quarterbacks. But as far as first string quarterbacks, he's not of that caliber. The one nice thing I can say about him is if you compare with this similar offensive line and the same offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, and similar, the same wide receivers, barring suspensions and injuries and such, is look at Matt Barkley's sack numbers compared to Jay Cutler's. And Jay Cutler is sacked way more often. And this is the nice thing about Matt Barkley is he's not holding on to the ball like Jay. He's not trying to force things. You're seeing, better pocket presence than Jay and better ball protection than Jay. But Jay has an elite caliber NFL arm. He just can't put it together to be an elite quarterback despite having the tools. Matt Barkley just doesn't have all those tools, but he clearly understands what the Bears system is and what they're trying to do. And that goes a lot. So, I'm not trying to defend Jay Cutler with what I'm saying about Matt Barkley. What I'm doing is saying the Bears need to figure out who the quarterback is going to be, and they need to move on. They need to find somebody with Jay Cutler's physical tools, but that can actually play quarterback within a system and protect the ball. And it's hard to do. In this game, so we talked about quarterbacks. Running backs, Jordan Howard, again, is a beast. Didn't get 100 yards this game, but he averaged right around 6.5 yards a carry. That's incredible. And the frustrating part is it seemed like Dow Loggins was going to get a much more balanced offense as far as run-pass ratio when you watch in the beginning of the game. And then he just started, slowing down on the runs and picking up on the passes. At the end of the game, Jordan Howard didn't have that many carries. The Bears didn't run that many times. I get that they had 10 minutes less of time of possession to, 25 to 35 minutes in time of possession between the Lions and the Bears. But still, the Bears need to run the ball, especially when they're running against a team that has a difficult time stopping the run, and you're going at 6.5 yards a clip. Is keep running the ball, gain that time of possession, keep your defense fresh, keep Matt Stafford off the field. That's the things you need to do, and Dow Loggins just isn't doing it. Is you need to be able to control that clock. You need to be the one that controls that clock. It's fine if you want to control the clock, but you want to run a lot of plays. That's fine. But you need to be the one controlling it. Don't be at the mercy of that clock. Is run the ball, dominate at the line of scrimmage. You've got two tackles that are not that great at pass blocking, and you've got Josh Sitton who's playing, but he's not 100%. And you've got a backup guard in the right side. Is give these guys a break. Is they don't have to pass block every time. Let them go out and dominate by run blocking. So, I give Jordan Howard an A because he's just been lights out this whole season. He's been such a steal in that 5th round. Wide receivers, they did okay. Give them like a B-, C+. Is Cam Meredith and Josh Bellamy definitely limited the number of drops that they've had. They've worked on that quite a bit from the Titans game, but they're still pedestrian, and you did see a big drop with Josh Bellamy, and that's because Josh Bellamy is a body catcher. When he catches the ball, there's two types of ways to catch a football. It's either you catch it, where you hit your body and you cup it into your chest, or you put your hands out and you catch it with your hands. Case in point is Odell Beckham Jr. is a hands catcher. God, he has this wide catch radius because anywhere, if his body is the center of mass, and he moves his hands all the way around in a circle, as wide as he can, that's his catch radius. He can catch anything within that circle. But Josh Bellamy's catch radius is much smaller because he catches with his body. And there's a reason why, if you watch the NFL Combine, that's one of the things they look for in those passing drills is, are they catching with their hands or are they catching with their body? You don't want a wide receiver that's a body catcher. I mean, it's fine sometimes if you need to catch with your body. I get it, but it's you preferably catch with your hands. You can bring it into your body afterwards, but catch it with those hands. Use your hands. I mean, it's a little bit unfair to beat up on Josh Bellamy week in and week out, but because he's a great special teams player that happens to play wide receiver on a team that's in desperate need of a wide receiver. So he gets pressed into duty because Eddie Royal's hurt, Kevin White is hurt, Marquise Wilson is hurt, Alshon Jeffrey is suspended. You need Josh Bellamy at this point. And otherwise he wouldn't be playing. And so for being a special teams ace that comes in, you got to cut him a little bit of slack. Cameron Meredith has looked pretty nice. And Marquise Wilson, I'm just going to say this, is he's a guy that I have been singing his praises since the Bears brought him into the organization. I saw him play in training camp, and I saw all these amazing tools from the guy. I'm like, this guy is going to be good if he can put it all together, and he's just never been able to stay healthy. It's time to part ways with Marquise Wilson. He's never going to blossom into that guy that you thought he was going to be. He's got great speed. He can do things. It's just he can't stay healthy, and that's the most important thing. Offensive line. The Bears' offensive line, I wanted to give them a higher grade than they did, especially considering the injuries that they have on the line. But they did some nice holes that they had for Jordan Howard. For the most part, they kept Matt Barkley pretty clean, but it was the penalties. The penalties absolutely murdered the Bears. You can't have all these penalties if you're the Chicago Bears. Your margin for error to win a game is so small. You can't keep having these penalties. And it just was super glaring in the last drive when the Bears were trying to win the ball game, and you had two costly penalties by the offensive line that not only were the 10-yard penalties each, so it brings you back 10 yards, another 10 yards, but all the yards you gained on that positive play, including a 28-yard catch by Cameron Meredith, that gets kaput too. So it goes from a 27-yard pass play to 10 yards back. So it's a 37-yard swing. That's the difference between making a tying field goal and having to do a Hail Mary at the end of the game. You can't do those things, and you especially can't do them when it's crunch time and you're at the end of the game and clock is running out. It's just not how that works. The Bears overall had, I guess we'll get into that in a second. Defensive line, I don't know how to grade them because, on one hand, I thought they did really great at getting a lot of pressure on Matt Stafford. They got to Matt Stafford and really went after him, and especially Leonard Floyd looked fantastic. The only thing I can knock the guy for is once he has the off season to really watch the film and see where he needs to improve his technique and work on it, he's going to be a beast, because there was a couple more sacks that he could have had in that game. He took bad angles, or he just missed that he could have gotten more sacks. But Leonard Floyd looks great. Pernell McPhee having Leonard Floyd in the opposite side of him has really made him that much better, because now you can't just focus on Pernell McPhee and into him. You have a speed, athletic guy, and you've got a power guy. When you have Lamar Houston on the other side of Pernell McPhee, they're two similar style guys. They're power rushers. This gives you a little bit of a thunder and lightning kind of thing. You had another great game by Hakeem Hicks, and Eddie Goldman I think is very good, but he hurt his ankle again, which has been a problematic ankle for a better part of the season. But as great as they were getting to the quarterback, is the Lions haven't been able to run the ball very well all season long, and they did a decent job running against the Bears. That was my big knock on them. Linebackers, again, I have to give them a consideration grade. If these were the two starters that the Bears started the season with as their starting guys that they picked to be their starters, I wouldn't be that happy. But John Timu and Nick Kwiatkowski being the inside linebackers, filling in for Danny Trevathan, the injured Danny Trevathan and the suspended Jarrell Freeman, they played pretty well. I like the instincts of both guys. Both guys can really lay the wood. I mean, Nick Kwiatkowski had that monster hit that, you can just hear it on your TV. That's how big of a hit it was. It was incredible. I think it gave the guy a concussion because the guy went right out of the game. But he's a nice fill inside linebacker, or old school, where he comes in and fills the gap. But neither one of those guys are speed guys. They're not gonna beat you to the sideline. They have to take angles to get you. That's the big knock on them. But for being young guys, a second-year undrafted guy and a rookie, was he a third or fourth rounder? They've filled in admirably. And then you get to the defensive backs. The Bears' defensive backs are so bad. They're not just bad, they are so bad. Harold Jones-Quartey, at the end of the second quarter, the third and long play, he absolutely got caught flat-footed and let Marvin Jones get behind him. If you're in a two-deep safety and you see a wide receiver that's uncovered by a cornerback, he's got to be your responsibility. You can't let him get deeper than you. And that's exactly what Harold Jones-Quartey did. And this is why he's always in the doghouse, because he does boneheaded plays. And the thing is Adrian Amos is hot garbage as well. And I've gotten to the point where I'm tired of even saying he's okay or I think he might get better. He's getting worse. His tackling is terrible, and that's why you have Deion Bush filling in his place. Deion Bush has played like a rookie at times, but you could at least see some improvement there. And I'm curious to see what you get once he gets a little more playing time and he learns a little more from Vic Fangio. But I'm liking Deion Bush, and I like Bryce Callahan, and sometimes I like Cravon LeBlanc, but the rest are hot garbage. Tracy Porter, although he is your leader in interceptions on this team, with 2. He's got 2 interceptions, and he's the leader on this team, with 3 games left to play in the season. But Tracy Porter played like a dumpster fire in this game, and he even took himself out after a big play, and I still don't understand. He put a cryptic, he just went out, he just left. And there's no injury report, no nothing. And he had a cryptic tweet that he apologized to the kids that saw what he did. So I don't know exactly what happened, but Tracy Porter took himself out of the game, and it's good because he was playing like crap. And I know that there's people out there that are giving praise to the Bears cornerbacks because you got two interceptions, but one was a deflection, and the other one was just an awful pass by a lazy and awful pass by Matt Stafford that got intercepted. But if you watch the rest of the game, is these defensive backs are so out of position. They're slow to get to the ball. They just don't play the game the right way, and it's really frustrating as a fan to watch because they're just is. If you could put even average cornerbacks and safeties out there with the pressure that the Bears front seven's giving, that you should be able to get way more turnovers and be a much higher rated defense. So even with hot garbage defensive backs, you still have the seventh best defense in football. That's saying a ton. Oh yeah, one more thing I want to say about Nick Kwiatkowski is not this game, but the next game when Jarrell Freeman is back from suspension. it's going to be nice to watch Nick Kwiatkowski play alongside of him, because I think there'll be a nice combination, because Jarrell Freeman is a little bit faster and a little more wily of a veteran, but Nick Kwiatkowski keeps the more he plays, he gets better and better. He's got some really nice instincts as well. I think it's going to be a nice combination. And going to Leonard Floyd again I love the development that he has, and you're seeing him do more and more things, and you're watching him be smarter about it too. There was one play where it was a 3rd and long, and you knew it was either going to be a screen pass or a draw, and it ended up being a draw, and he knew that he had help, and they bottled the running back up, and he had a long way to go. So instead of just trying to drag him right down, he held him upright for everybody else, and he kept trying to strip the ball. That's good heads-up football. And plus, you're watching him every week look like he's developing new pass rush moves. And that's the key, is if you never develop new pass rush moves, then you become Mark Anderson or Alonzo Spellman, guys that were flashes in the pan, but they never amounted to more because they never learned to do anything other than the things that they already knew how to do. Let's see. I appreciated the Bears' aggressive offensive play calling. Is early in the game they were right up against their own end zone, and rather than typically you either go out of the shotgun and try to do a quick pass, or you just do a quick handoff to try to give yourself a little more space by gaining 2-3 yards. But I really liked that the Bears were so aggressive that they did a play action, and the Lions were almost certain that they were going to hand it to Jordan Howard to try to do just that and get a few more yards to create a little safety room. And they all bid in, and Matt Barkley made a nice play. I love the aggressive play calling there. What else? I mentioned this before, but I'd like to see a bit more balanced pass versus run ratio, and I wish they would vary up the types of runs they do. It seems like they have a handful of runs that they really like doing, but after they do them a couple times, it seems that they get bottled up. I'd like to see them vary a little more and not be afraid to utilize Jeremy Langford or Kadeem Carey if need be too, just to keep fresh legs. But I mentioned before that the Bears have such a limited margin for error to win ball games. Is typically if you win the turnover battle, you win the game. And the Bears had a +2 in turnovers. So the Lions turned it over twice. The Bears had no turnovers, and the Bears still lost. And that's because they had 11 penalties for 139 yards. And that's just the penalty yards. That's not including all the yards that they lost because of great plays or the timeliness of those penalties where they either killed the drive or kept the Lions drive alive. So that just tells you something right there. Now I've just got a handful of odds and ends notes that I'm going to go through. Tracy Porter had a really bad pass interference call and an illegal contact all on the same drive. That's bad football, and he's a veteran. He should know better than that. And they were both just really bad plays on his part. DeAndre Hall made his return when Porter goes to the locker room just before half, which is nice to see because I think he's going to be a talented cornerback once he gets a little more experience under his belt. But I think this is the first game action he had since, I think, week 4. So you need to see a little more from him, and he needs to. The only way to get better is being at practice and being on the field. You had on the Anquan Boldin touchdown, you had Harold Jones-Quartey man-on-man with Anquan Boldin, and that is a bad matchup for the Bears. Harold Jones-Quartey is not a good cover safety, And to put him against a Hall of Fame caliber wide receiver like Anquan Boldin, although he has lost several steps, he is still a wily veteran, runs great routes, and he's going to beat Harold Jones-Quartey every time. Bad matchup there. The Lions probably were licking their chops when they saw that. Honestly, the biggest story of this loss for the Bears was not being able to stop the run of the Lions, and terrible penalties, and the Bears' defensive backs being bad. Those are the three components of this loss. Is if you're the Bears, you know the Lions are awful at maintaining a running game. Is just so they should just take that away. Don't let them build on that. Make them become one-dimensional and beat you that way. But the Lions were able to manage to run against the Bears. Not fantastic, but they were able to run enough to keep a balanced offense that made the Bears have to defend both. Is if you come right in and you just start dominating, take away that running game. Just take it away. They're not good at it anyway. Take that running game away. Make them beat you with the pass. I mean, Matt Stafford and those wide receivers, they can beat you with the pass, especially when you have bad pass rushers, bad defensive backs. But it's something you have to do. Is you have to take away one element, and you're not going to completely shut down that passing game. So take away the running game, make them be one dimensional. Then you have guys like Pernell McPhee and Leonard Floyd that don't have to worry about the run plays. They can just pin their ears back, and they know they just run to a spot. They know where Matt Stafford's going to be. He's going to be 3 to 5 steps back and behind the center, and they just have to pin their ears back and just get there. It makes it much easier, and you can gamble more that way. But the Bears kept letting them run the ball, and it allowed the Lions to A, get their defense fresh, and B, establish dominance with the offensive line, C, dominate the line or the time of possession, and D, it allowed the Lions to have a balanced attack, and the Bears had to defend run and pass every time, and they couldn't put them in predictive spots. And if you're a defense, you want to put that offense in a predictive spot where you know what they're going to do, and it makes it much easier for you to defend it. The Bears weren't able to do those same things. They were able to run the ball, but they just didn't run the ball enough to make it more effective. They needed to keep the Lions' defense out on the field longer so their defense could rest and get fresh. I really feel that the Lions' ability to run the ball kept that defense out on the field longer, and by the end of the game, you just saw some gassed Bears defensive players. We had the Cravon LeBlanc pick 6, which was a nice play by him, but it was much more a bad throw by Matt Stafford, where he threw behind Boldin. And you almost had back-to-back pick 6s, but after that Cravon LeBlanc pick 6, you almost had another one on the next possession. The Bears tight end Daniel Brown, he's been a positive surprise. He's not an elite tight end by any stretch, but he's been solid. He's been a solid blocker, solid pass catcher, and he's a nice number 2, number 3 option for you. That makes it so when Zach Miller comes back next year, is you don't have to add that as another position that you have to fill. Charles Leno is hot garbage. I think we all knew that. And I think the last thing I want to mention about this game was that it's not so much about this game. Is I've said this before. Is I have several listeners that send me messages in defense of Adrian Amos, and I'm not 100% convinced that you're not all related to Adrian Amos. You're all like his grandma, his third cousin, his sister's boyfriend. I don't know what you guys are, but you all love Adrian Amos. And I had a guy this week who said that he's a beast in Madden. that's all fine and good. He might be a beast in Madden. I have never played him in Madden. I don't think I've played Madden in like 10 years. But in the real NFL, he can't tackle. And that's a problem. Is Adrian Amos needs to take this offseason and reevaluate what he's done this year and not do it ever again because he's not been good. But I appreciate you guys sending me messages in defense of Adrian Amos. Keep it up. Hopefully he can turn it around. You know, the Bears have him under contract for another couple years, and he's young. But I just need to see a lot more from him. And then one more thing from the NFL front is a regular listener who's also an Adrian Amos defender. He's a regular, staunch Adrian Amos defender. He was asking me about potential quarterbacks that the Bears could draft. And I love scouting the NFL draft. It's one of my favorite things in the world. That's really what started this show. I know you regular listeners know this and heard this story a million times. But if you're new, the reason this show started in the first place is because I wanted an outlet to talk about the NFL draft and the Bears options. And I believe it was the first year that I did it. I picked all but the 6th round Bears. I think I had picks. Without pulling it out and looking at exact numbers, I think the Bears had one pick in each of the first 6 rounds, and I picked 1 through 5 spot on, and I just got the 6th rounder wrong. So I was happy about that. But that's what I love to do, and much earlier than I usually do. I usually do it towards the Super Bowl when I start doing it, and I'll do a position a week all the way up to the NFL draft. But if you guys have players that you want to know about now, I will go and I'll watch game film. And the way I do it is I watch college football during the season, but I more watch it for an entertainment value, not so much as really identifying key attributes of guys as far as how they'll project in the NFL. But so I'll go back and I'll watch game film, where I watch every single play that the player was involved in. I watch every single snap that he took where he was involved in a play, and I watch it for several games for that whole season, just to get a really good idea of what kind of player it's going to be. So this time I was asked about Luke Falk, the quarterback from Washington State, and I only watched a couple games of his just because it was a busy week, but I watched, I think, 3 games, and I watched every snap he took. He's 6'4". He's got a really nice height, and if you look at his stat line, he's got a nice height weight proportion for an NFL quarterback. But if you actually look at his physique, he's got a very slight lower body, a little bit Sam Bradford-ish thin. The pros on him: he stands tough in the pocket, and that's a nice thing. But to be fair, I think a little bit of his poor pocket presence. He doesn't always know that there's pressure coming. Not so much that he's just standing tall. But he's an accurate thrower, especially outside the numbers. And he's got just absolutely fantastic stats. 72% completion, averaging 352 yards a game, back-to-back 4,000 plus yards passing seasons. But the cons is on timing patterns, he throws behind the receiver a lot. It's almost like he's not willing to throw where he knows the guy is going to be. He waits till he sees he's about to get there, and then he's late on the pass. And it's so consistent that I really think that's what happens. You get a lot of dink-dunk type passes, and he's not particularly fast or athletic. He doesn't have a cannon for an arm, and he plays almost entirely from a shotgun. He's a Mike Leach quarterback. What does that mean? Is Mike Leach is he's a proponent of the air raid style offense, and the air raid style offense has not produced a lot of top name NFL quarterbacks. It's got a lot of guys that have put up gaudy college numbers and they just haven't panned out in the NFL. Guys like Tim Couch, Nick Foles, Kevin Cobb, Johnny Manziel, Geno Smith, Brandon Weeden, Cliff Kingsbury. These are these are the types of guys that that system produces, and it makes you worry a little bit that is Luke Falk a system quarterback? Can he overcome being labeled the Mike Leach quarterback to be an NFL caliber guy? I don't love him, but I don't dislike him. If I was the Bears and he was available in the second round, I would jump on him in a heartbeat. But I'm not taking him in the first round with a top 5 pick by any stretch. If you look at some of the top sites, the way that they project him as their rankings is Sports Illustrated has him as a late first round, early second round, which is kind of where I see him. CBS Sports hasn't ranked him yet because he's still junior and he hasn't declared, so they don't rank guys that haven't declared yet. Pro Football Focus has him as their number 3 quarterback, and Walter Football ranks him as the number 6 quarterback and projects him anywhere from rounds 2 through 4. If you get this guy in round 4, I think that's just an absolute steal. But I would try to nab him the second or third if you can. But Luke Falk, I think he's a guy that you can groom. There's one thing you can't is if you give me a quarterback with a high completions percentage in college, I can work with him in the NFL. If there's a lot of guys that aren't athletic that have gone to the Hall of Fame and have won Super Bowls, but there's a lot of guys who have come in this league as athletic quarterbacks that haven't been able to get the job done. So I can mold a guy who's a high completion percentage guy and put him in a system that makes him puts him in a good opportunity to win. Whereas an athletic quarterback, there's only so much you can do with him. You can't teach him to be an accurate passer. So I think he is a nice pick, but it just depends on where you get him. If the Bears are trying to target him with their number 4, number 5 pick, then that's really sad. You're not going to put together a winning football program by drafting him that high. And speaking of that, is if you look at statistics and probabilities, the highest probability is that the Bears are either going to draft number 4. The overwhelming percentage is the Bears are going to draft number 4 in this draft. But they can go probably number 3 or number 5. But that 3 to 5 range is where they're going to pick. And there's not a lot of quarterback options in this draft. There's no like Andrew Luck. There's no just like this guy that stands out as I'm the number 1 pick. And in that case, I know that the Bears need to draft a quarterback. But I've said it time and time again, I fully stand by the philosophy of drafting best player available. If there's no quarterback that's worth that number 5 pick, don't force the issue. That's how you get guys like Blake Bortles or Jay Cutler, is you draft too early. There's always a guy who's going to develop later in the rounds that you can work with. And like I said, Matt Barkley, if you need, in your rebuilding process, if you need to have a Matt Barkley for another year, that's okay. He's shown enough where if you're a rebuilding team and you know you're not going to make the Super Bowl, he's shown enough where he can start on a team like that. But once you get to the point where you are ready to compete in the playoffs, that's when you're going to have to develop somebody else. So if I'm the Bears, I'm not forcing the issue, even though I'm desperate for a quarterback. I'm not going to force the issue by overdrafting one. I would be more willing to draft 2 later on than 1 too early. Does that make sense? I would rather take 2 different guys that I can try to groom in my practice squad or as my number 3 guy, rather than overdrafting and taking somebody in the first and sort of being stuck with him. Because there's enough holes on this Bears team that you can get a really good player in that number 3, 4, 5 spot that can help your team right away. And I just don't think there's going to be a quarterback that's going to help you, especially considering if you look at the teams ahead of them. As it currently stands, the Browns have the number 1 pick. Browns need a quarterback. The 49ers have the number 2 pick. They need a quarterback. The Jaguars have the number 3 pick right now. And there's a good chance they could need a quarterback too. The Bears right now have the number 4 pick. They need a quarterback. The Jets are 5th. They need a quarterback. It's not until you get to pick 6 and 7 with the Rams and the Panthers. But even though you go after that, is right now then it's Rams, Panthers, Saints, Chargers, Eagles. Those next 5 picks, they don't need quarterbacks. But those first 5 picks need a quarterback. So there's not a 2 quarterbacks that are top 5 worthy. There's not even one, I don't think, let alone enough for the Bears to draft one at the number 4 position. Is take somebody else. Take an impact player that can help you for a long time rather than reaching on a quarterback. Because here's the thing. There's not many general managers that get to draft 2 quarterbacks in the first round. There's not many. Because if you hit on that first one, he's with you for a long time, and you don't see general managers that long for the most part. And if you draft a stinker in the first round, you're probably going to bottom out and get fired before you get a chance to draft a second one. So if you're going to draft that top quarterback, you better do it right. And I'd much rather have them draft somebody in the 2nd or 3rd round, because although 2nd and 3rd round picks are valuable, they're not first round picks where you have so much pressure on getting it right. And I think that's enough about football for now. I want to talk a little bit about baseball. We haven't talked the White Sox in a long time because there's been really nothing to talk about. And with the off season here and the winter meetings here, the Hot Stove League has started. All eyes were on the Chicago White Sox and what they were going to do. And there was 2 philosophies that the White Sox could do. I guess a couple. Two main things, and then some caveats within. Is they could either keep their top guys and try to build around it, or they could do a fire sale and do a complete rebuild. And the White Sox, everyone was waiting, and they decided that they were going to do a full-scale rebuild like the Cubs did. And within that is they could have decided to sell ancillary pieces like Todd Frazier's and players like and Dave Robertson's and players like that, or they could have do what they did and right off the bat set that trade value and set that trade market by trading Chris Sale first. And trade Chris Sale they did. They moved him to the Boston Red Sox, and they got a king's ransom for him. They got Boston's number 1 pick, or their number 1 prospect, their number 5 prospect, their number 7 prospect, in Yohan Moncada, Michael Kopech, and 2 other guys, and they got a nice package from there. So Michael Kopech is a guy that he can throw, they say 105 miles an hour, but he's going to be better served by slowing that velocity down and being able to get more control on his pitches. But he's a guy that you could project as a starting arm, and if he's part of your starting rotation in the future, and Yohan Moncada is going to be your second baseman for the next decade, then you've done all right for Chris Sale. And then they turn right around and they trade Adam Eaton, and they basically absolutely plundered the Nationals for Adam Eaton. And I think the Nationals had their eyes set on some other players, and when everything was happening so fast, they panicked and did whatever they could to get Adam Eaton. And I guarantee that general manager of the Washington Nationals woke up that next day, the same as he would have if he was hungover and found the ugliest person in bed with him going, oh God, what did I do? He traded his number 1, his number 3, and his number 6 prospects for Adam Eaton, including Lucas Giolito, so Yoan Moncada is the number 1 fielding prospect in baseball, the number 1 hitter, and Lucas Giolito is the number 1 pitching prospect in the minors. So when you get rid of Sale and Eaton, you bring in the number 1 pitching and the number 1 hitting prospect in the minors. Suddenly, you went from a terrible, barren minor league system to one that's absolutely stockpiled full of guys, and you're still making moves. You're still going to move Todd Frazier. You're going to move Dave Robertson. You're going to move Jose Abreu, and you still have the option, if you want to move Jose Quintana. Those are some nice moves you can make to really bolster your minor league system and still bring more guys in. So I love what the White Sox are doing, and I think Rick Hahn is a really smart baseball man, and it seems like Kenny Williams is finally moving out of his way and letting him be the general manager. And you're seeing the things he can do, and he absolutely set the tone with the league that I'm getting the package I want for Chris Sale. And he did. He found that the market was lukewarm for Chris Sale, and he forced a market for him by pitting teams against each other and creating a frenzy and making somebody get desperate and give him what he wants. And that was absolutely smart general managing. Moving to the Cubs have decided, you could tell that, we all saw this in the playoffs, that the Cubs organization were not happy with their bullpen. And they tried to bolster it in this offseason. They made a big trade with the Kansas City Royals by trading Jorge Soler to the Royals for Wade Davis. And Wade Davis is the guy that the Cubs had as their number 1 option by the trade deadline, is they wanted him to be that closer. And when they went to the Royals and said, we want Wade Davis, the Royals said, you have to give us Kyle Schwarber. And they went, nope. And so they went out and they traded and got Aroldis Chapman. They like Wade Davis better than Aroldis Chapman, better than Kenley Jansen. And they went out and signed or traded for him. And I thought they could have got more for Jorge Soler, considering how much team control he's on and the talent that he has, to get a stud reliever, but with only 1 year left in his contract. I just felt they could have got more, but the Cubs had a little bit of their hand forced on them because they have a full outfield. They've got too many guys and not enough positions. But they got Wade Davis, and I'm really happy about that. And he's also a second cousin of former Cubs catcher Jody Davis, so we got a Cub connection there. They signed Koji Uehara, who is the former Boston Red Sox bullpen arm. They traded through the Rule 5 draft with the Brewers to get Caleb Smith, and they signed Brian Dunston. They are also trying to re-sign Travis Wood, but the issue in that is that Travis Wood is looking to go back to being a starting pitcher, and I have a feeling if he tests the water and nobody's willing to guarantee him a starting rotation spot, he'll go back to the Cubs, because it's better to be an important bullpen arm and spot starter for a great team than to be a possible starter on an awful team. And then there's the big story also is the Cubs are potentially going to sign Tyson Ross, who is recovering from thoracic outlet surgery. And if you're not familiar with thoracic outlet syndrome, what he has, it basically occurs when you get either blood vessels or nerves in the space between your collarbone and your first rib, which is called the thoracic outlet. They get compressed, and it causes pain and numbness in the shoulder and neck areas and your fingers. And he had surgery to fix that. And they're hoping that once that comes back, you get the Tyson Ross pre-injury. And the Cubs are willing to bet that, with a couple of $1 million contract, that they can bring him in, and with great pitching coach and great manager and a strong organization, if he can come back to what he was, again, the Cubs are going to have an awesome rotation again this year. And looking at the stats of the guys that the Cubs did bring in is Koji Uehara. He's a right-handed bullpen arm, and last year he was 2-3 with a 3.45 ERA and a 63-11 strikeout ratio. Gave up 8 home runs in 47 innings with a .957 WHIP. Wade Davis, last year he was in and out of the lineup and played hurt most of the year that he did play. I'll go to his 2015 numbers, where he was 8-1 with a .94 ERA, a 78 strikeout to 20 walk ratio, 67 innings pitched, only 3 home runs, and a .788 WHIP or 787 WHIP. So phenomenal numbers. Caleb Smith is a young guy, minor league type guy that the Cubs feel that they can mold into something going forward. And Brian Dunsing he's another guy. We'll go to his 2015 numbers. He was 4-1 with a 4.25 ERA and a 1.38 WHIP. I'm not sure the purpose of that signing. I haven't seen Brian Dunsing pitch much, but I don't know what the Cubs saw in him, but they saw something. And there's going to be more, definitely, news, especially from the White Sox, but I feel like the Cubs are going to make another move. They'll probably, either another trade or a back-end rotation kind of signing. Because the talk is that the Cubs want to go to a 6-man rotation for part of the season to preserve some of those arms that they have. And they're also in talks about a contract extension with Jake Arrieta. And the one last thing I want to mention about the Cubs is I think we're all disappointed to see Dexter Fowler leave the Cubs, and especially upset about the fact that he's going to the St. Louis Cardinals. But here's the thing. Number one, there's not enough outfield spots. They're really not. You're either going to block Albert Almora, who was a very high draft pick for this Cubs team, and he's a much better fielder than Dexter Fowler, and he's a young kid that you feel that's a much cheaper option. You have Kyle Schwarber, who is the best hitter in the outfield, and you have Jason Hayward, who's the best defender you have, and your big money guy. And also, if he bounces back next year to his career average numbers, you're going to have a phenomenal player out there. So there's just not enough room for Dexter Fowler. And if you consider the financial contract that he wants, and I think he got $17 million a season for 5 seasons, that's basically the Cubs came out and said, hey, listen, we have a finite amount of resources we can allocate to player salary, and we feel that it's better spent on pitching than on another bat. They feel that they have enough bats in the lineup and that they can bolster that center field spot with, John Jay, who was a fairly cheap signing, and Albert Almora, and then be able to spend that money on pitching. So it was sad to see him go, and I wish him... It's hard to wish him luck because he's playing for the Cardinals, but I wish him personal luck, but bad luck on his team. I hope he plays for a losing franchise. And one last thing I want to talk about quickly, I know it's a long episode, is the Chicago Blackhawks. You have Jonathan Taves, who's missed 9 consecutive games with this back injury, and you've got Brent Seabrook, who's missed several games with an upper body injury, and you've got Corey Crawford, who's going to miss still more time with recovering from his appendectomy, and they're still winning. They still have one of the best records in hockey, and they're still winning games, and that just screams the fact that Coach Quenneville is a really good head coach. As much as I want to piss and moan about him and doesn't like to play young players, he's a good coach, and he's taken young talent and some inexperienced guys and been able to reshape how this team wins games. Right now, they're struggling scoring. They're really struggling to score goals, and they have a lot of guys that are hurt, and instead they are rallying around playing good defense, having good goaltending, and winning these games 1-0, 2-0, 2-1. Low scoring, close games, and that's what they're doing. And you're allowing the big name guys to do what they need to do. So against Dallas Stars yesterday, they won 3-1, and you got a goal from 3 of your big names: Marian Hossa, Artem Anisimov, and Artemi Panarin. Those 3 guys scored a goal, and you get contributions from young guys like assists from Ryan Hartman, and you have Scott Darling step up again and play a really nice game. And speaking of Scott Darling, I keep seeing so many people who just don't appreciate what you have in Corey Crawford, and they think Scott Darling should be the goalie. And here's the thing about Scott Darling. Scott Darling has played really nicely in many relief spots for Corey Crawford. It's a nice story being from Lamont. Scott Darling is an absolutely nice guy. We've had him on the show before. He's humble. He's really nice. Just a nice guy. But he is not an elite NHL goalie. He's not an elite guy. Corey Crawford is an elite NHL goalie. It's hard to see because, it's hard to see the forest through the trees here in Chicago. But if you were an outsider looking in and you saw Corey Crawford and you were facing him as if you were a fan of another team and you had to face Corey Crawford, you would be like, crap, this guy is good. The way we look at like a Jonathan Quick, he is an elite goalie. He's a really, really good goalie, and we don't appreciate him here. And it's nice to see the backup situation with Scott Darling filling in so nicely for Corey Crawford during his injury. But when he comes back, Corey Crawford's going right back in the goal, and he's going to do elite goalie things and keep this team in a championship hunt. So I don't know when Jonathan Taves is coming back, but I keep hearing that he's close, and that if this was a short-term thing that he could come out and play, but that they're looking to improve his long-term health. So they would rather give him more time off now so he has better long-term health than try to rush it and bring him back and potentially have, get the short-term benefit but the long-term ailment. And I think that's the smart way to do it because he's still so young and he's just entering his prime. And you need him. You've already locked into him for a lot of money, but you need him to perform for all those seasons. So we shall see. The Blackhawks have been a lot of fun to watch, and it's with new faces and being able to see the new defensemen play. I've been down a lot on Trevor Van Riemsdyk, but the last couple games he's played well and turned it around a little bit. It's going to be interesting to see what some of these young defensemen do. But, we'll talk more Blackhawks as the Hot Stove League starts to die down and we start to wind down the NFL season. We'll start ramping up Bulls and Blackhawks talk. So that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please make sure you share this episode and the show in general with your Chicago sports fans, friends. Make sure you hit subscribe on however you're listening, whether that be iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube. Make sure you hit like. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Hit us up at Twitter, at Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like Denver New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on the plains.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears!
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down